Hey guys, this is Elena. Welcome to the channel. I'm excited you're here, and today we're going to be talking about how to overcome language barriers, well, for your move to Costa Rica, or maybe you're moving to somewhere else. So just some tips to overcome some language barriers. So if this is your first time here on the channel, I help people move to Costa Rica. I have a team. We do everything A to Z. We make everything simple, easy, organized, and make sure that you don't forget anything really important. And the way we do that is via one-on-one services. I have a great new e-course that came out that a lot of people in that program, which is awesome. It's my most affordable option. And we do retreats. And last, I want to tell you about my podcast that I've made. So I've teamed up with one of my favorite, business buddies, Jairo, and we have come out with a really fun new podcast. So we're really excited about that, and that's new. So the links to everything that I noted are going to be down in the description below. And there's also a link down there in the description to book a call with me if you want to talk about your move or your scouting trip to Costa Rica. Now, the only thing I ask about booking that call is please only book a call with me if you're actually serious about moving or taking a scouting trip. If you're just curious, if you're in those beginning stages of like, well, I don't know, is this right for me? There's so much out there for you to be looking at that's for free on this channel, on everyone else's channels, online, that can help you get to that point. So the time to come to me is whenever you're actually ready to take some action. All right, now let's get into the content. So you might face a language barrier unless you're moving to Costa Rica and you already know Spanish. Some people I work with actually already do speak Spanish, which is great for them, but a lot of people don't. So if you don't already know Spanish, then you are going to be facing a bit of a language barrier, and that can be a little tough. So I faced a major language barrier when I first came here. I didn't really speak Spanish. I took some in high school. I remembered very minimal, and yeah, it was definitely a struggle, but I can tell you as of now, I am fluent in Spanish. No, I'm not perfect. Like I have some grammatical errors. Probably I don't always conjugate correctly. Like I'm not 100, I'm always going to have an accent no matter what I do. But that's okay. But I can say that I am fluent. So I want to offer you guys some tips maybe to help you get there. So at least in my language learning journey, it was when I first moved, it was a lot of listening. And actually I can say I could have gotten fluent a lot sooner if I had probably done some of these things that I'm going to tell you to do. Again, a lot of this channel is definitely do as I say, don't do as I do, because I struggled through a lot of these different aspects of moving here, and I could have made things a lot easier on myself. So number one, one that I really used when I first moved here was the language translation apps. So those can be a really good thing to help you function on a day-to-day basis. If you're going to have someone come into your home to do some work on something, you need to make sure that communication is clear. So it's an easy thing to just have your phone nearby. You can use Google Translate. Some people might use some other apps. If there's a particular app that you like to use, like if you use whenever you maybe travel to other countries or go anywhere, maybe put that down below. Maybe other people will want to check that app out too. But, I just would use Google Translate. But anyways, there could be much better apps than that as well. The language apps, you can even talk into them and then they can talk out in the other language. And Costa Ricans are very used to, seeing those as well. And y'all can kind of go back and forth on that to make sure that everything's understood. You're going to be doing that too. Let's say if you're texting someone, let's say, I don't know, you're trying to coordinate a delivery of something. And the person who's texting you, let's say on WhatsApp, is texting in Spanish. You just copy, paste it into your translation app, write what you want to say in English, whatever language you speak, it'll spit it out in Spanish, copy, paste it, put it back over into the chat. Now, one thing to note about translation apps is they're not always perfect. They're definitely not always perfect, but it can be a big help. You still might be confused as to, okay, well, I still don't understand what this means, because sometimes it does translate a little weird, but it's something that can help you with the language barrier. And yeah, of course, I'm going to mention in this video learning Spanish. Learn as much Spanish as you can, but these are just some things to help you with the language barrier that you're going to face. Okay, another thing that I've mentioned here on this channel that I actually own are these translation headphones, and they're pretty cool. So I've had a lot of friends and family and people that I know actually check them out because they've been curious about them. So I actually have this video right here where I demonstrate how to use them. So these are something that you can use. I mean, gosh, I plan to travel the world at some point, go to travel to different countries, and I'm definitely bringing these headphones with me. So if I'm in Italy and I don't know Italian, I can understand what's going on. Like, these are actually pretty darn cool, and we've used them a lot. Mainly friends of mine, I'll let them test them out, and they're really cool. So that could be another thing that can help you with the language barrier. people, they're pretty easy to operate, and maybe they can definitely be a help for you while you're dealing with that language barrier. The headphones kind of gives an extra added touch. You can speak into it. And then for the other person that you're speaking to, it goes into their ear as their language. So you each are getting to speak in your own languages, but you're getting whatever the other person's saying in your ear so that you can understand it better. Okay, another one is kind of charades. Like maybe some of you can attest to this in the comments. If you've moved here, and you're trying to overcome this language barrier, you end up using your hands a lot. You start maybe acting out different things that you're trying to say. It's kind of funny, and I would say just have some humor with it. A lot of times Costa Ricans will laugh along with you, and just you kind of end up using a bit of charades sometimes. So that's another thing that you can use to try to overcome your language barrier in that moment through conversations. Okay, and of course, last, but this is the most important, like actually learning the language. So whether that's doing one-on-one in-person tutoring, there are online one-on-one classes with personal tutors. You can do one-on-one in-person group tutoring. You can do, or like, a group class. You can do one-on-one. So you can do in-person or online one-on-one or group classes or tutoring. There's all these free, there's so many apps, Babbel or the Duolingo. I mean, there's so many apps that if you can at least just be building your vocabulary little by little, like being consistent with using the apps, perhaps doing some classes, even going to a language school. We've had some people who moved down and they said, we're going to spend 6 weeks at this language school first, and then we're going to hop into our first, real rental. So there's definitely take some formal education in learning the language. Also, maybe teaming up with a Costa Rican who wants to learn English, and you guys every X day, every Wednesday, you have your coffee and you do like a little language exchange on top of you doing your classes. So this will be your best way in order to get over the language barrier, because your language apps, the translation app, the translation headphones, the charades, these are all just crutches. What you really need is to actually be learning the language as much as possible. Now, I understand some people just don't have a knack for learning languages. Like, that's just a fact. Like, some people just don't, they're not good at it, and that's okay. So if you're one of those people, you might have to rely on those crutches a lot more, maybe than someone who does kind of have a knack for picking up languages. I mean, hey, some of us are really good at math. Some of us are really good at philosophy. I don't know. We're all made different. Our brains are made different. So if you are just one of those people that it's just hard for you to grasp different languages, that's okay. Just be patient with yourself. As you're learning, one of my tips would be, don't be afraid to sound silly. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. I know it can feel like a little bit embarrassing when you're out and you're like speaking a new, you're trying to speak this new language, and maybe you feel a little bit self-conscious of like, do I sound weird? Am I saying this correctly? Am I pronouncing it okay? Like, maybe try not to overthink it too much. Honestly, a margarita or two will help if you're fine with that. Like, that'll definitely help get the language rolling too. And for me, my journey was a lot of listening. So I want to say minimal vocabulary for like 8 to 9 months, and like just really like 8 to 9 months of a lot of listening and like using some minimal words that I could pick up and use. And then after that, things started to come a little bit more easily. And I won't say that I probably wasn't fully fluent until maybe 3 or 4 years in. 3 or 4 years in, I probably wasn't fully fluent. And then that's being here immersed in the country all the time. I could have gotten faster if I'd done classes, if I'd done, if I'd taken more formal education to advance it. But I really just kind of threw myself out there and into the culture. I lived in neighborhoods where no one spoke English, put myself in situations where I had to use it. So just use it as much as you can on a day-to-day. And again, don't be afraid to sound silly, and Costa Ricans will absolutely really appreciate it if you are using Spanish. Sometimes you'll use Spanish with them and they might speak back to you in English because they might want to practice, or they might be trying to be polite. And if you do have like a nice Costa Rican friend, or you're starting to make friends, maybe tell them, hey, please correct me, or I want you to correct me, because sometimes they may not correct you if you're saying something wrong, because they might feel like, oh, I don't want to like make the person feel bad. Just like, we may not go around correcting everyone's English because, that might make the person feel a little strange. So maybe if you want someone to kind of hold you accountable and correct you on things, then be vocal about that. So those are the tips that I have for you about kind of overcoming language barriers. Again, you can use some of the crutches. That's going to help you overcome the language barrier a bit. But really, your ultimate is going to be actually learning the language. All right, well, I hope that this video was helpful. Again, don't be afraid to get out there and make mistakes, language learning mistakes. And all the helpful information that I noted earlier is in the link below. We have a new retreat coming up, so definitely check that out if you want more of an in-person experience. Those are amazing. I love them. And don't forget about the new e-course that I have going out. And what else? The podcast. Woo! All right. I'll see you guys in the next video, and thanks again.